guys, it's me, Moody Strwberriepie or Mick, and welcome back to this channel. So in the past couple of videos, I have been still talking about mental health, just in a different way, shedding light onto the Black Lives Matter movement, and I still want to do that, of course. It's still very relevant and important. However, for this week, I really did want to make a video on something that I've thought I should talk about for a while now. So that is borderline personality disorder. Throughout the video, I will be referring to it as borderline personality disorder, or BPD, the acronym for borderline personality disorder. This is a diagnosis that I recently got at my new treatment center, and it's a diagnosis that has a lot of stigma around it and a lot of kind of adversity both in and outside of the world of therapy. So I'm going to be talking about some of the facts about it, what it is, what helps it, what causes it, and sharing kind of my personal experience of having it in my life and what it looks like for me, because every mental illness is going to look different for every person, of course. So to start off, borderline personality disorder is a disorder characterized by difficulties in regulating emotions. So pretty much what that means is that people who have borderline personality disorder can experience very intense emotions that last for an extended period of time, and it's harder to return to a baseline of stability once those emotions have been felt. Those emotions that are extreme can be triggered by an event that is triggering, or just the perception that it is taken into context within the person suffering from borderline. This difficulty in regulating emotions can lead to poor self-esteem, identity, poor relationship issues, and intense emotional responses to stimuli. Struggling with self-regulation can also result in extreme behaviors such as self-harm or suicide attempts. There's a few different estimates on how many people in the US population have borderline personality disorder. From NAMI, I got around 1.4% of the population will have this diagnosis or struggle with this diagnosis at some point in their lives. The astounding thing is that 75% of these cases are from women. There is research that says men probably equally suffer as much as women do. However, they are oftentimes, rather than being diagnosed with BPD, are diagnosed with PTSD or depression. Now, the term borderline has been up for much debate. It is the same term that has been used for quite a long time. It has a different term in Europe that I'll pop up right there. I just totally forgot to bring it up right now. But pretty much it stands for borderline between psychosis and neurosis. The name stuck, and it doesn't describe the condition very well, and it can be seen as more harmful than helpful. The term borderline also has a history of misuse and prejudice. Borderline personality disorder is a clinical diagnosis, not a judgment. I got that from this really awesome website I'll link down below. But yeah, borderline has been something that is used in common phrase to bring down somebody. If you call someone, oh God, you're so borderline, it has a negative connotation to it. So certain members of the community use the term emotional dysregulation to describe BPD. Not everyone does that, and it is still the term that is in the DSM and that clinicians will use to diagnose you with. So some of the key symptoms and signs of borderline personality disorder, and these are just like general ones. They aren't going to be the same fit for everyone, but I just wanted to go over kind of the main ones. So there's frantic efforts to avoid real or imagined abandonment. So a lot of people with BPD struggle with abandonment and attachment issues. So that fear of being abandoned can turn somebody to cut someone off if they think they're being abandoned, or run away from a situation where they think there will be abandonment. Unstable personal relationships that alternate between idolization, oh my God, they're perfect, they're amazing, I love them, and devaluation. I fucking hate her, she's horrible, I don't even know why we're friends, something like that. This is sometimes known as splitting. So you're, splitting between adoring someone and devaluing someone. There's a disoriented and unstable self-image that affects relationships, moods, values, opinions, goals. If you have an unstable self-identity, your sense of self changes pretty rapidly. You could be into art one day and be into gardening the next day. That's a silly example, but just a change of what makes you up, a change of what your values and goals are. You will cycle through those more often if you have an unstable sense of self. There are impulsive behaviors that can have dangerous outcomes, such as reckless spending, unsafe sex, reckless driving, and a misuse or an overuse of substances that occur with this disorder. There's self-harming behavior often reported in BPD that includes suicide attempts or threats. There's periods of intense depressed mood or anxiety that can last for a few hours to a few days. And I know you're thinking, some of this sounds really similar to bipolar. Yes, it does. We will definitely get into that, but they are different disorders, and you can be co-diagnosed with both, like I am. There's a report of chronic feelings of boredom or emptiness, inappropriate, intense, uncontrollable anger that seems to not fit the situation necessarily. That is often followed by shame and guilt for getting so angry or lashing out. And lastly, disassociative feelings, so disconnecting from your thoughts or sense of identity and out-of-body type experience. Out of body for like the feelings, they don't feel like they're your feelings almost, stuff like that. And stress-related paranoid thoughts. Severe cases of stress can lead to brief psychotic episodes. That's not, again, the case for everyone with borderline. So those are some of the more commonly noted symptoms of borderline personality disorder. There's more, and some people only experience some of those. Some people might experience all of those. It just depends on the person. But those are the main symptoms of borderline personality disorder. So similar to bipolar disorder, they don't really know entirely what causes borderline personality disorder. There's a few theories. They're similar to the bipolar theories if you watch that video. Genetics, so there's no specific gene or profiling that can be the borderline personality disorder gene. However, studies show that if a parent or relative suffers from BPD, it is more likely that you will also have borderline personality disorder. Environmental factors can also cause BPD, so things such as experiencing traumatic events, especially during childhood years, physical or sexual abuse, or the extreme loss of something close to you, things along those lines, can increase your chance of developing BPD. And the brain function of someone with BPD might look a little different from someone who doesn't have BPD. The emotion regulation system inside of someone with BPD might look different, suggesting that there is a neurological basis for some of the symptoms. Specifically, the portions of the brain that are in charge of your emotions and decision-making or judgment-making skills might not communicate in the best way with one another with someone who has BPD compared to someone who doesn't. There are some related symptoms with borderline personality disorder, so things that might be co-occurring or come along with it. So anxiety disorders, PTSD, bipolar disorder, depression, eating disorders. In specific, it noted bulimia nervosa. However, all eating disorders, of course, can occur, and substance use disorders. So those are all things that are more likely to happen alongside borderline personality disorder. Now, the treatment of borderline personality disorder used to be something to be desired. It was a disorder that not many people felt they could treat. It was considered a difficult to treat diagnosis. However, as we have been progressing, there's a lot more options out there nowadays. So psychotherapy is the #1 option for borderline personality disorder. It is not medication, and I'll get into that in a second. One of the top rated things for people with borderline personality disorder is DBT, or dialectical behavioral therapy, developed by Marshall Linehan after realizing that CBT, or cognitive behavioral therapy, wasn't effective enough in combating symptoms of borderline personality disorder. The main goals are to teach people to live in the moment, cope healthily with stress, regulate emotions, and improve relationships with others. It was originally designed for people with BPD, however, it has also been proven to be very effective in treating people with mood disorders and varying other mental illnesses. There are other types of therapy that are very effective for borderline, but psychotherapy and DBT are some of the main ones. Talk therapy is really important. Having a trusted therapist goes a long way for someone with borderline personality disorder, someone they feel comfortable with and that they can be honest with. And then medications aren't really a huge part of treatment of borderline personality disorder because there's no medication that specifically treats borderline personality disorder. Some medications might be prescribed to aid in anxiety symptoms, depression symptoms, mood regulation, occasionally an antipsychotic for disorganized thinking that might occur. But overall, medication is sometimes proven to be more harmful than helpful for people with borderline personality disorder. I know a lot of those are similar to bipolar symptoms, so I'm going to quickly go over some of the differences. And again, you can be co-diagnosed with borderline personality disorder and bipolar disorder, as I am. But that's not the case for everyone, and misdiagnosis is common, so it is important to make sure you are getting second options and evaluated by a few people to make sure you find what fits you right. So for the mood changes, bipolar 1 is easier to differentiate between bipolar 2 and borderline, so we're going to mainly focus on bipolar 1 differentiations. Of course, I'm not a doctor, I don't know everything, so this is just going to be a brief little explanation of differences. So people with bipolar 1 cycle between depressive states to manic states, and in between those states, there are periods of wellness that can occur from days to weeks to months to years, depending on the person, and it's not usually a constant cycling between depression and mania. Depression and mania, it's more steady and prolonged than that. However, people with BPD have more persistent day-to-day mood changes that more greatly impact daily life than someone with bipolar disorder. Sleep is also an indicator. Sleep disturbances are often an early sign of bipolar disorder, and sleep disturbances are less reported in borderline personality disorder. Relationships that are unstable are a hallmark trait of those suffering from borderline personality disorder, and not as often with bipolar. Can still occur, of course, however, it is more typically associated with BPD. Self-harm is also more common in BPD, not to say it doesn't occur with bipolar disorder. However, around 75% of individuals who have BPD have engaged in self-harm behavior, which is higher than for the bipolar statistics on that. So those are some of the main differences between borderline personality disorder and bipolar disorder. Just be patient, it takes time to get a right diagnosis. I only just got diagnosed with borderline, and I've probably had it for a fair amount of time, so it's all a process. Next, I just wanted to kind of go into what it's been like for myself as an individual living with borderline personality disorder and what that looks like, because I think that there's a lot of misconceptions on people with borderline personality disorder, and I'm not trying to say that I know everything I'm talking about. I'm just giving a personal account here, and I know I've made mistakes. And yes, I have this disorder, and it affects my life, but that's not an excuse for the ways that I've treated people sometimes. So I want to get that out of the way. So I have experienced a lot of childhood trauma, and it's greatly affected my view on the world, my view on myself, and my view on others. And I'm working really hard at my new treatment center to combat those things. However, that could be a big reason why I have BPD today, is based on the amount of childhood trauma that I suffered through and how it shaped me as a person. So my first treatment center I went to as around 15, 16 or so, and I did a bunch of research on mental illnesses. I do not recommend necessarily self-diagnosing. Talk to a therapist or a trusted clinician. However, I was trying to educate myself because I had no idea what the hell was going on with me. And I was really stuck on bipolar disorder and on borderline personality disorder. Both seemed to really fit me, and I met a couple of individuals in treatment who had BPD, and I remember mentioning to my first therapist, "So what do you think about me having borderline personality disorder?" And she looked appalled. She was like, "Oh God, no, you do not have that, don't worry." And I thought it was really, really weird. She was a really good therapist otherwise, but the bias against borderline personality disorder permeates deep into the therapy community itself, and definitely something we need to work on. So I kind of started off with borderline personality disorder being this thing that was bad and scary, and I didn't want to have it. So I just went along with my bipolar diagnosis. Then around 17 or so, I was like, bipolar just doesn't seem to be the only thing. It doesn't seem to be right. I didn't even know if I was bipolar. I talked to my aunt, who's a therapist, and she was like, I don't think you have borderline. And I was like, okay, maybe I don't, but something doesn't seem quite right here. So then I go to my last treatment center before this one, and I was like, what if I'm borderline? And one of the clinicians flat out told me, you're fucking not, you have empathy. And I was like, oh, okay, well, I don't want to be something that doesn't have empathy. Guess I don't have borderline personality disorder. And then the doctor there and I were talking about me potentially having some of the traits, maybe not the full diagnosis. And I went with that. That seemed less scary to me. Then I came to my new treatment center, and first day of my treatment plan, it was on there. I wasn't surprised. I was a little taken aback. But I've been learning so much more about borderline personality disorder since being here and what it actually is. It is not a disorder that means you don't have empathy at all. If anything, people who have borderline personality disorder, at least for myself and some people that I've seen, seem to have a very high level of empathy. They just maybe don't always know where to put it. Very self-critical of themselves. For me, I have had unstable relationships my whole entire life of absolutely loving my friends, loving my partners, and then being absolutely like, oh my god, they're gonna leave me. Okay, well, fine, time to cut that off immediately. I don't feel anything. Very rocky, very chaotic, very enmeshed in my relationships. I've also been very manipulative in my past. I'm so working on that. That's not who I want to be. I would lie without even thinking about it, and I would just use the way that I'm able to go about the world to my advantage. And I regret that, and I take accountability for that for sure. I also definitely put myself in bad situations with people I chose to surround myself with, places that I chose to engage in, the things I chose to engage in, all because there was this I've always felt this deep chronic feeling of emptiness, like something just wasn't there, and it led me to make really dumb choices. So I would put myself in really bad situations to feel anything, something. I had a history of self-harm starting when I was around 13 or something, and an eating disorder starting when I was around like 10, maybe earlier, I don't really know. But I've always engaged in these very extreme behaviors, and I've always had intense mood shifts. Not only the bipolar mood shifts of mania and depression that are obviously a very dramatic shift that lasts for a long time, but in the more day-to-day things, I could go from being pleasant, content, happy, to pissed off and angry out of nowhere. And my anger would just build and not match the situation. I never took it out on others. I took it out on myself, which also isn't a good thing. But my anger was always something I could never control and was really scared of. I also suffered from huge trust issues with others. I didn't want to let people in. I became very emotionally distant. The disassociation that I mentioned earlier hit me very hard. I completely disconnected from my emotions, from my sense of self. I was just this like body floating around. And that was kind of all it was. I could talk about my traumas with a straight face without getting emotional because I had disconnected my emotions from the trauma a very long time ago, which I'm working really hard on tackling right now. Borderline personality disorder is treated as a symptom of trauma in my treatment center I'm currently in, and a lot of the work I'm doing centers around trauma and tackling borderline traits. For example, the attention seeking that can come with borderline personality disorder that I definitely did to a T for a long time, I've been tackling while here. I drew some like hearts on my face for makeup the other day, like with eyeliner, and I thought it was really cute, and I was told to take it off by my therapist, and I was like, why? It's not Sharpie, like I'm not arguing, I just want to know. He goes, no, I know, but we'll talk about it later. And I was like, okay. And it's because that's an attention-seeking behavior. Even if I don't fully realize it, it is that. And so all my work here is working on my trauma, working on my bipolar, working on my borderline, all kind of at the same time, because they see it all as a symptom of your trauma, which is an approach I really like. It makes me feel a lot more like a human and not just a little science project like I felt at some other places. And living with borderline personality disorder has been something I'm getting used to, knowing that I have it now, and it's been scary because it makes me wonder if I can ever have healthy relationships, but I know that I can as long as I keep working on it. It's just something else I have to deal with, and I am and I will. But borderline personality disorder is not something scary that should make you scared to talk to someone who has it or anything like that, because people who have it, at least again from my experience, are people who really care and love a lot, and they just feel really, really misunderstood and out of place all the time. And if we just kind of engaged in conversation and engage in the topic of what it's like to have this mental illness and what it actually means, I think things would be a lot better for how the world sees borderline personality disorder. And if you're just getting diagnosed with this disorder, just know there's a lot of resources out there for you. I'll link some down below. And know that you're not alone. You're amazing. You're fucking awesome. And you're starting this journey. And there's a lot of help out there for you. Alright guys, thanks for watching another video of mine. I hope you guys are having a good time and staying safe. And I'll see you guys next time. Bye!